The Lower Bann flows from Bridge at the northwest corner of Loch Neagh into the Atlantic Ocean here at the bar mouth at the far end of the Port Stewart Strand. It's the only river flowing out of Loch Neagh. Loch Neagh lies like a kind of big basin in the heart of Ulster, and the waters and the rains of 5 counties come flowing into it through the other rivers. The Bann here is the only river flowing out. This is Loch Neagh, and we'll make it look like water here. In fact, this is the way that Finn McCool's supposed to have made Loch Neagh. He lifted a big sod out of the middle of Ulster and he threw it over, and with that he made the Isle of Man. But here's the Moyola River coming down from the Sperrins, the Ballinderry coming in, the Black Water coming up between Tyrone and Armagh, and starting away down in the Mournes and coming right up here is the Upper Bann, which is the kind of the tail of the Lower Bann, and then the Braid and the Main and so on flowing in from the Antrim side. But from Tuam, the River Bann, the Lower Bann, the one that we're on, comes right down and flows into the sea at the bar mouth. And on either side, the counties of Derry and Antrim flow down to the banks of the Bann. Miles south of here, at the bottom of Loch Neagh, the Upper Bann flows into the loch. And behind me, about a quarter of a mile away, at Bridge, the Lower Bann flows out of the loch as a kind of drainage of the loch. And I'm standing here on a sand barge that's going slowly in with a heavy load of sand towards the sandworks at Bridge. And in the sandworks, the dirty sand that's sucked out of the bottom is cleaned and graded and processed and drawn away. The man here driving the barge said to me just now, the loch's a wee gold mine. We get sand out of it, we get eels out of it, and we get pleasure from looking at it. We hope to mine a little of what's lying along the banks of the Bann as we start off here from Tuam and head towards Coleraine and the Barmouth. As soon as the barge pulls in, the process of washing and grading it begins. The load is soused by a large hose of water, and the sand turns into a thin slurry. Then this slurry is sucked into another pipeline that carries it up into the plant. Some of the water drains off, and the washed sand comes slurping out of the chutes at the end of the process, constantly piling up like a range of small Alps. And it is being constantly eaten away by the diggers and the lorries that carry it to roadworks and building sites all over the north. My first sight of the Bann came from the bridge at Tuam. You looked out on one side towards the floodgates that lay like a gag on the mouth of Loch Neagh, and on the other side was the eel fishery. But I realised gradually what an old place Tuam Bridge was. Archaeologists have found fish bones and the remains of ancient hearths on these banks that tell us there were people living here 8,000 years ago, and they have found flints and bits of pottery. For long before Tuam Bridge was built, there was a ford and a settlement of fishermen and hunters going about their business at this spot. I even find the sound of the name dark and mysterious now. Tuam. It's like an echo of the past. The Bann is a gullet that has swallowed centuries of history. Out of the sand and mud and bog of its banks, archaeologists have harvested thousands of items that show that this river, just like many other rivers, was the centre of a civilization. It has given its name to a certain kind of flint instrument called a Bann flake. All of this tells us that in the Stone Age, there were people flitting cautiously through these reeds and bushes. And to this very day, when the season opens, people migrate here and practice those ancient skills of the fisherman, going after the pike and the salmon and the perch. The Bann's a deep, slow, quiet-flowing river. It slips along like a silver eel between the fields here. In fact, it's a deep and dangerous river. We're never allowed to play near it. There are no sand beds, there are no stepping stones on the Bann. And it's probably because of this depth and sense of danger around it that it's always been a boundary. There's a boundary between the clans, the Irish clans way back. It was a boundary that marked out the London Company's grant of land that became Londonderry, and it separates Derry from Antrim on this side. I always get a sense of being on ancient ground in the place. When I was at school, they dug out the skeleton of a great Irish elk in the sandworks near Tuam. And somebody found a rusted, eaten away old sword, and we called that the Viking sword. We know, in fact, that the Vikings came down from the sea in the year 839, and they spent the next winter on Loch Neagh. And it's still easy to imagine those long ships snaking furtively down this water, and a band of Norsemen scanning the bank for any sign of the Bannsiders, or better still, any sign of a church or a monastery they might pillage. Bannsiders have come and gone. Bridges have been built and rebuilt. The level of the river has been changed. It has flooded and been drained. In fact, the level is now controlled by gates like these ones behind me here at Loch Neagh near Kilrea. Navigation channels have been dug. Locks have been set up all along the river. But behind it all and underneath it all, like a silver thread holding together the whole history of the Bann, there swims the silver eel. A few yards downstream from these floodgates, there's a steel and concrete ruin. This was an attempt at a modern eel fishery, a 20th century labour-saving device, which failed, however, to save the eels from escaping and had to be abandoned. But the eel has never abandoned his approach. Further downstream, beyond these modern ruins, there's an older eel weir, and one that employs methods nearly as old as the eel himself. The prehistoric eel fishers here would have used spears with a flint spearhead to take the eel from the river. And here, at Loch Neagh, the fishermen still have spearheads of a kind dividing the water. This eel weir is probably very like the ones used by those prehistoric Bannsiders. The wicker prows of the weir slice into the current, forcing the eels to make for the gaps in the V. But on dark nights, when the eels are running, the bottleneck is blocked by the eel net. If it's a dark night, the nets have to be lifted 3 or 4 times during the night, and the eels are taken out and dropped live into a storage tank. The next day, they are gathered and shipped away to Billingsgate. Because of the demand for Bann eels and the export orders, it's hard to buy them in this country. One of the fishermen said to me, "They're as hard to get at as the stars in the sky."
You ready?
I take her on up there, I think. Dermot. That's terrific. At Coleraine, the pulse of the river's life seems to quicken, as if it were responding to the salty tang of the tide that comes muscling in from the sea. From being a boundary, a tongue reminding us of the past, the Bann becomes a highway, a sea road, a centre of commerce and recreation. Coleraine has always been important as a crossing point of contact between the counties of Derry and Antrim, and a meeting point between the sea and the land. It's the old capital of County Derry, and the County Council offices are still sited there. It is all the bustle and prosperity of an important place. Traffic and trains move constantly over the bridges, yachts and small ships go to and fro in the stream. One of my most vivid memories is of watching the coal boats come in from the sea towards the bar mouth. They were met in the open sea by the pilot and guided upstream from there to Coleraine Harbour. I thought Coleraine must have got its name because of all the coal that kept piling up in the quays. It's always been a thriving market town. You remember beautiful Kitty one morning was tripping with her buttermilk to the market in Coleraine, and the goods, including the coal from Coleraine, pour out from the port to the hinterland of North Derry and North Antrim, to places like Limavady, Ballycastle, and Ballymoney. Now there's a new university that overlooks the river, and a whole colony of boat clubs and marinas, breathing an air of prosperity, and breathing also that slight air of excitement that always seems to come when you sense the sea is just round the corner or over the hill. I remember very clearly catching a glimpse of this last mile or two of the Bann. I was on my way to Portstewart for my first holiday. I'd never seen the sea before, and the way the riverbank changed from being green and wooded to being bare and windy, the way you began to see sand and sand dunes and blown grass creeping back inland, it all gave me a thrill of expectation. And I remember standing, half afraid, on the long spit of rock and concrete at the bar mouth, where the Bann finally loses its way and loses its name in the waves and currents of the Atlantic Ocean.